Hey there everyone, and welcome to some tales of RPG horror story cringe, narrated by D&D Doge. In today's episode, we have a tale about possibly one of the longest lore dumps in D&D history, as well as some of the worst guests to ever invite to RPG night, a story about a dungeon master that can't improv, and more. But before we get into those, let's first relax with some A Simba R. Ah, there we go. Now I think that we are ready for some cringe. So let's do it. DM has been lore dumping us for 90 minutes straight, and he's still going. By Reddit user, Captain Chucky. I'm not against a 5-minute lore dump to get some context, but this is effing exhausting. The Skype call started more than 90 minutes ago. He told us the entirety of his homebrew world creation myth, the factions that fought in the ancient wars, where every deity and race comes from, everything. I like world building myself, as I run a game with a homebrew world, but I would never lore dump like this. This is ridiculous. This is making me want to call the game off. He's not a stranger, as I would have left 10 minutes in, if he was, but he's a friend's husband, and I'm sure if I say something, I'm going to start some crap in our group. He's now going over every homebrew race and subrace, their abilities, their skills, their traits, their culture, and how they get along with other races. 90 effing minutes. I could have watched a movie in the meantime. Edit. It's from his effing novel. Now it makes sense. I don't think I'm going to play with this guy. Edit 2. 2 hours. It's been 2 hours total. I still have no idea how the game is actually played, and I'm not going to remember that many gods named Watharanjank, who has a brother named Rafastagnor, and a second cousin once removed named Yurtragnaknog. Just 2 useless hours. At least it's over now. Yeah, that is a bit much to sit through. Like DM said, I can understand having a lore dump at the beginning of a game, especially if it's a homebrew, but going on for that long is freaking overkill. It's also kind of funny that it seemed like OP was typing up the story as the events were taking place. I don't blame OP for not wanting to play in that game. If the DM was taking this long just for the introductory part of the game, I can only imagine how much of a slog the rest of it would be. But we actually have an update on that whole situation, and some events that happened afterwards. So let's hop right in. The worst guest ever. It's what my character would do. A ruined weekend, and an update on the 2-hour-long lore dump. You're in for a treat. I bring you both an update to my previous post here. DM has been lore dumping us for 90 minutes straight and he's still going. And a new, fresh story including that guy, his wife, and how they've made me think that inviting a couple of meth heads would have been better than inviting these 2 players. The people involved are me, the lore dump guy, who I will call Turdkian, Turdkian's wife, CLL or Crazy Cat Lady, my girlfriend, my friend and our 5e DM, John, and another friend, Jane. To the update, I talked to Turdkian and told him that what he'd done, lore dumping for 2 hours in the most dry, uninspired, and boring way imaginable, was unacceptable, disrespectful of my time, and completely unnecessary, though he doubled down. After a brief discussion, I ended up telling him that I disagreed with whatever the F that introduction to a system was, and that it had completely killed any interest I had in playing his game, and we left it at that. The news story. Our group had planned a weekend at my house where we would watch the extended versions of Lord of the Rings, and I would run our first ever game of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And we were all excited. Not gonna lie, I would be too. That sounds like a great weekend. Turdkian insisted on running his crappy homebrew system that we still knew nothing about. John, who had suffered the lore dump with me, was hesitant. I told Turdkian that if the group was okay with playing his system, I would spend the day studying while they played. My girlfriend said no. Bless her. Turdkian dropped it as the only one excited to play his game was CCL. I help everyone make their sheets. CCL half-asses it and ignores me for 2 weeks while I ask her to fix the things that she picked wrong, like spells and equipment. And Turtkian makes a ruffian rogue, in his own words. The day before the game, on Friday, I pick John and Jane up, and Turtkian and CCL go silent all day until my girlfriend asks them if they are okay. They leave their house 6 hours after they said they would. They arrive at my place, and since CCL is pregnant, I let them sleep in the main bedroom, mine. John sleeps at the second bedroom, Jane sleeps on the couch, and my girlfriend and I sleep at my mother's house, who lives a few minutes away. That is to say, I'm treating them well, in my opinion. The next day, the game starts. Throughout the game, Turtkian's character is uncooperative, selfish, and endangering the rest of the party. He's close to being thrown in prison for disrespecting a member of the town's council and admitting, in front of her, that he broke into the house of another NPC. He completely ignores his backstory and the hook I gave him to tie it to the adventure path story, Age of Ashes. Essentially, he's playing like a clown. Both my girlfriend and John say that they didn't really get what the hell Turtkian was aiming for, and they found his presence at the table disruptive to the game. At one point, Turtkian's character actually got both Jane's and CCL's characters drunk and attempted to get them naked in the middle of the tavern. That was my first hard no, and the mood of the table changed completely. John suggested that he try to do something more innocuous, like painting mustaches on their faces or whatever. But in the end, it was creepy, and Jane was visibly uncomfortable. They left the next day, and I gotta say, they are the worst effing guests I've ever met. Now, I don't want to bore you with paragraph after paragraph of narration, so here's a list of every crappy thing they did while staying at my house. My girlfriend has celiac disease. CCL made the honest mistake of using a knife to spread butter on her bread and stick that knife in my girlfriend's butter, which we keep separate to avoid contamination. The not so honest mistake was touching every other clean plate I had in my cupboards after touching her bread, and leaving every surface covered in breadcrumbs. While John, Jane, my girlfriend, and I were cooking and putting dishes in the dishwasher all weekend, Turtkian didn't lift a finger. All he did was eat and drink. He downed 2 entire bottles of whiskey by himself, in 2.5 days, by the way. Though at least he bought them, as none of us drink. Turtkian has drank around 6 2-liter bottles of Coke throughout the weekend, which he proceeded to just leave wherever he happened to be at the time. Behind an armchair, at my porch, next to the effing trash can, but apparently not inside for some reason, under the table, basically wherever. Turtkian brought whiskey with him to my bedroom and drunk an indeterminate amount of it there. Speaking of my bedroom, they effed on my bed. Whoa, whoa, whoa. That is a hard boundary broken right there. Holy God. I know this because both John and Jane heard them. They told my girlfriend as she was dropping them at their places. In fact, CCL told my girlfriend in the morning after to quote-unquote change the bed sheets, tee-hee. Turtkian has loudly peed with the door open in the bathroom right next to my living room, where the rest of us were trying to enjoy a meal. CCL interrupted me while I was GMing to explain some crap about her work to Jane. My attempts to resume the game proved unsuccessful. Table talk is inevitable, and I don't mind it, but this went on for 30 minutes, and since Jane was sitting across the table from CCL, none of us could hear each other over her conversation. CCL had the effing audacity to shush John and me the following day, as we were laughing, to explain some crap about her pregnancy. CCL has taken a BB gun I had in some drawer and handled it in a very unsafe way, pointing it at both Jane and Turtkian's faces. Turtkian and CCL have made everyone uncomfortable more than once by excessive and inappropriate PDA. Not a peck, which I would consider normal and healthy, but some groping and explicit sexual talk. Considering that they effed on my bed, it's not surprising. My girlfriend actually told me that they've done this several times already when we were playing at John's place, and she accompanied them to get food while I went with John and Jane. When they were leaving, CCL took advantage of my unwillingness to kick a pregnant woman to keep my porch door open for 10 minutes, dropping the temperature of my entire living room. It's winter and pretty cold here. In order to lure a stray cat into my house, despite me telling her that I know that cat and it neither wants to be inside or wants me or anyone else touching it. This is after me telling her 4 or 5 times to close the effing door and leave the effing cat alone. Well, I mean, kitty. I do not know how people over 30 are able to be this absolutely stupid, disrespectful towards their host and the other guests, intrusive, careless, dirty, and overall a-holes. I know that many of the horror stories here would be prevented or fixed by a simple conversation, and even though I was not interested in staying friends with them, I wrote CCL a few hours ago that their attitudes were completely disrespectful, shameless, and disgusting. They both denied it, even though John avoids conflict at all cost and would set himself on fire rather than talk crap about someone if it wasn't a big deal. Then Turkian and CCL started calling me, so I blocked them both after kicking them from my group. TLDR, I invite a-holes into my house, and they effed on my bed. Yeah, it sounds like Turkian and CCL never really learned proper etiquette, or how to be a guest in someone's home. I mean, OP was so welcoming that he gave them his room since CCL was pregnant, and even slept at his mother's house just to accommodate them. And those two repaid that kindness by being slobs, and even doing the dirty on OP's bed? No wonder everyone else involved in that weekend doesn't want to have anything to do with those two ever again. Hopefully, OP and his girlfriend sterilized those sheets. Or, hell, just get a new bed entirely. Just, holy Christ, man. Anyways, let's move on. The DM is the main character? By Reddit user, BroCakers. I've been in a campaign with a group full of beginners for 4 months now, and today I had the worst session yet. We started off from last week's session. We, 3 level 5 characters since 1 player was missing, were sent to the woods to stop a violent wizard gang from progressing their plans. When we got there, we found a wizard with 4th level spells, so obviously a high level. Defeating him wasn't so hard, but we had to use a lot of resources, and it was actually a fun encounter. However, after we progressed farther, we saw their quote-unquote leader, and he summoned several large wasps. As we were fighting the wasps, the leader kept spamming spells, so as a quote-unquote tryhard would, I attacked the spellcaster. I hit him with a 2nd level Divine Smite, and he took 22 damage. The DM and the party got upset that I attacked the child. I guess he was a student to be in the gang. After the first wizard had at least 40 hit points, I thought that the leader had at least that much, but he had 9 max HP and got permakilled apparently. Sure, I thought to myself, but then the DM had the most powerful NPCs in the game come out of nowhere and teleport us with like a 31 save DC to an arena to be judged. Now, in today's session, us, 3 level 6 now, yay, had to spend 150 minutes fighting a level 20 barbarian that the DM plays in a different campaign. He had a 25 AC, plus 18 to hit, 400 plus HP, and a 23 dex save for a 4d8 lightning damage magic item. Not only was this only fun for the DM, playing his own character against people who can only deal half damage on their 1 in 10 chance to hit, but he was literally metagaming us. He knows that I only have a +1 to my dex save, so I took 4d8 every turn without a save. He also knows that our beginner player plays a useless, sorry but true, monk wizard who used all of his 4 spell slots early, so he just ignored him the entire time, even though he was the only one in melee range of the raging barbarian. At the beginning, I knew that having the DM's own characters and lore was pretty scuffed, but it hadn't been too much of a problem so far. The worst was that they come in from nowhere to save everyone from dying, that breaks any tension, all because he needs them for plot. Whenever we break some arbitrary rule or moral, he feels that he has to punish us with a god NPC. This just makes it so we can't be the main characters of our story. Edit. We lost before we had gotten to less than 60% HP, and our own barbarian only lasted for half the fight. Edit number 2. There seems to be confusion when I used leader. I'm using quotes because that's what the DM called him, but I obviously think that that's ridiculous for the 9 HP child to be the boss at all. Yeah, that sounds a bit odd. I can understand that OP would logically think that the leader would be more powerful than the one wizard that they ran into in the woods. I mean, sure, it may have looked like a child, but this is a fantasy world. Perhaps he was a powerful wizard that just had the appearance of a child through some sort of sorcery. I mean, their quest was to get rid of the wizard gang after all. Then the teleporting the party to face the DM's character from another game just seemed like some sort of ego itch that the DM wanted to do, and was probably the plan from the get-go. I would say to OP to have a talk with their DM and bring up these issues. Hopefully, that could fix things. But if this type of thing keeps happening afterward, I would just leave the campaign. No point in playing something if you're not having fun, and no D&D is better than bad D&D and all that. Let's move on. When the GM can't differentiate between in-character and out-of-character, the campaign barely makes it out of the first tavern. By Reddit user, Kashar. This is one of those not that bad horror stories, more of a cautionary tale. Years ago, before a certain co-writer of the system revealed himself as a massive hypocrite and RPG horror story material, I wanted to try Dungeon World. Luckily, I found a group on Roll20 who wanted to try it out after a few shot, and joined as a player. We had a session 0 in which the GM made sure to emphasize that he wanted characters to be able to work in a party, and not go off doing their own thing. I mean, that makes sense for a few shot. We created the characters, and I really liked the other players. All of them had experience in other systems, and were quick to grab a playbook and make choices. The GM was rather quiet during the character creation, but I didn't think much of it at the time. In our first, and only session, the party arrived in a small mountain village. We entered the tavern, had some in-character small talk, and explored the bonds that we had pre-created. But we pick up mumblings from the locals that people have gone missing over the past week, and this was the hook for the adventure. Bang, the tavern door flies open, and in strides a snotty, preening stranger. He declares that he is the son of the mighty bandit lord, Ido NT Remember, and their band of brigands has kidnapped various villagers. They plan to sell them into slavery unless a ransom of amount of gold pieces is paid. Seriously, it's been at least 5 years. The gold is to be brought to a clearing in 3 days to make the exchange. He then turns to leave. Our ranger and paladin won't have any of that, so they block the doorway and confront him. "You don't seriously think you can make a declaration like that, and we'll just let you run off? Where are these villagers being held?" But then he responds that if any harm comes to him, the villagers will never be seen again. We won't have any of this, and we're determined to capture this little snot, interrogate him, and free the villagers before his father has time to move them to a slave market. Now, that might have been rash or stupid, but I think it's an understandable stance to take, and a valid course of action for a party of rugged adventurers. The bandit, and it was very clearly said in the specific snotty accent of the bandit, not the GM's usual voice, insists that the villagers will be gone forever if we don't let him leave. We do not relent, and he dodges past the ranger and fighter, who both fail their rolls, so fair enough. He is out the door and running for the edge of the village. The ranger pulls out her bow and announces a called shot, a specific ability in her playbook. It's debatable if she could do it, since it has to be done on a defenseless target, but I would have rolled that a target with his back turned is rather defenseless. But if she can use the move, she can aim for the legs to slow him down. She crits it, which according to the move would hobble him and deal damage. And he dies on the spot. I, as the bard, can't use magic to heal him. He is dead in seconds from an arrow through his leg. That's a downer, but we do what adventurers do. We search his possessions for clues, pocketing any incidental valuables. Nope, nothing. The ranger looks for tracks, but without a roll, gets told that there are none to be found. We ask around the village, but no one knows anything about anything. No caves where a band of robbers might have holed up, rumors of ruins suddenly occupied, trails of smoke from cooking fires in the eastern glades, or any other avenue of questioning we could come up with. Nada, zilch, nothing at all. Finally, the mayor of the village comes up to our increasingly frustrated party and announces that we have doomed the captives and are banned from the village, that we should move on and let them mourn. We break character, completely flabbergasted that the GM had let us poke around in search of the plot for what must have been more than an hour, and felt a lot longer, just to hit us with that. We openly asked, how are we supposed to find the bandits, since we are stumped? We can't find them. We killed the NPC and failed the quest, as per the GM. And he says that he warned us multiple times that it would happen. The NPC, with a vested interest to pretend that it would happen, said it, but 4 experienced roleplayers did not get that the GM was trying to communicate out of character because he was using the NPC's distinctive voice. And then, he just left us high and dry for the rest of the session. He seemed amused that we tried to find other ways to locate the kidnappers, and seemed to have enjoyed listening to our increasing frustration when we didn't get any results. Quite surprisingly, the GM wanted to schedule another session. But, quite unsurprisingly, we all declined. Yeah, that would be incredibly frustrating. It sounds like this GM just had a set railroad that he wanted the players to follow, and just didn't have any ability to improv or adapt. Using a character's voice, and saying that what obviously sounded like roleplay was him out of character warning them, just sounds like an excuse. Then, to let the players go that long with no intention of giving them even one iota of a clue on how to continue, he shouldn't be surprised when no one wanted him to GM again. But that is going to do it for today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may your guests never do it on your bed. Until next time.